Matthew and I had finally arrived back in Congo after getting married. With domestic flights in Congo-Brazzaville not being available for several months, we prepared for a cross-country road trip. We spent a few days in the capital doing things like purchasing an oven, getting our phones on Congolese network, and exchanging cash. Our road trip had several goals. One, we would meet up with our teammates, Dr. Joseph Harvey and Michael Wood in Oyo. We brought with us a vial of IV contrast, as a patient from Mfando needed a CT scan, but the facility in Oyo didn't have any contrast. The patient was a teenage girl whose blood pressure was running in the 210s. We were also bringing with us a young lady with a large right-sided aneurysm to the neck. We were bringing her to the border of Cameroon, getting her most of the way to Mbingo Mission Hospital that had agreed to accept her as a patient. She and her mother would take a bus the rest of the way to Mbingo Hospital. Number 3, later we would pick up a barrel of aviation gas. There was another patient in Mfando that needed to be transferred to Brazzaville, but again, with no domestic flights and him being in no condition to take the bus, we had found a missionary pilot who had agreed to come to evacuate him to Brazzaville. But he would need to refill his fuel while in Mfando. And fourth, of course, moving Matthew and I to our new home. And so it was November 2022 when we found ourselves on this grand cross-country road trip. So it's about 8:30. We left home at like 5:20ish a.m. We've been making pretty good time until this little accident.
So as you can see, our tire came off, the bolts got sheared off.
How do you know the bolts got sheared off?
Because
what does that even mean?
The
tire, I guess, flew off, and then there's a few guys who came after our car. They're like, here are some of your bolts. So yeah, not much interesting to say here. We got on the road again once the tire was put back in place, but about an hour later we were stopped. The road was closed. A new factory had opened nearby, and President Sassou was coming to inaugurate it, and there was a parade to celebrate. So we parked our car and watched the people go by. This is the second time I've been at a presidential parade. There's something so fun about Congolese culture and their love for parades. We don't do them quite as well in Canada. And of course, stopping again to evaluate and tighten our tire. It was late afternoon by the time we arrived in Oyo, too late for the CT scan. We would come back the next day to do that. So we headed to our home for the night. That night, we stayed in a house that belonged to friends of ours who hadn't been there in many years. It was so ridiculous to have AC and no light or water, but hey, flushing a toilet with a bucket isn't too bad as long as you can hold the flashlight to see where you're dumping the water. This is a little store where I came to get our breakfast. That door's usually open. The lady is what she's selling. She's got her bread. Usually she has eggs, so I was hoping for hard-boiled eggs to put on our bread, but there isn't any, so she is making us some sandwich. Je fais une vidéo pour montrer à la famille. Oui. Je dis, voici comment on mange au Congo.
On mange africaine.
Oui. Tu peux dire hello.
Hello, bonjour.
Bonjour. Merci. I think we spent 2 nights in Oyo. Bea got her CT scan, and we were able to visit with another family who were living nearby. Leaving Oyo, we drove by this beautiful campus of whitewashed houses. I don't remember what they were for, but the juxtaposition of these houses to the sod houses that followed will never cease to amaze me. I love driving through rural Congo. I love seeing the tall trees and the different styles of houses along the way.
So this is Africa. They have very nice roads here.
The road from Oyo to Wesso is quite nice. What else, Matthew?
It kind of looks like southern Florida. No, not southern Florida. Panhandle, Florida. That is what it feels like.
Oh yeah, a little bit. I could see it. We split off. Half the group drove to the Cameroonian border to help the lady with the aneurysm and her mom cross the border, and the rest of us went ahead to Wesso. We got the much better end of the bargain because we got to rest and time to do laundry by hand while the others were driving. So we are at our hotel in Wesso, Fingers, and that is the restaurant, and that is the reception foyer place in hallways. And then you run down this hallway. It smells so much like air conditioning. And then the very last door, you go knock, 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 knock. Who is that? It's Matthew. And now we're gonna go look for food.
Goodbye.
We ended up getting one of my favorite street foods, grilled catfish. They're small little guys, about 3 fish in each serving. The fish and broth are wrapped up in these banana leaves, and then the whole thing is grilled over charcoal. Served with either bread, rice, or kwanga to soak up the juice, we opted for bread. I'm not sure how far spread this is, but banana leaves make great takeout containers. So you take a ferry from Wesso, and that's when we really started to feel like we were in Africa's interior.
Hello.
Hi! So we are just outside of Wesso, and we are waiting for the ferry. There's the river. There's the ferry. And this is where I think our trip is going to get a lot more interesting, because Wesso is the last big town until our next big town, which is Mpondo. And that ferry is flying, to say. So yeah, praying for dry roads, but it rained. So we're going to see. We go up from Wesso to Nyele and then south again towards home. Kind of like doing a huge circle around the worst of the swamps. We drive through Nuabale Ndoki National Park, where people go to see elephants and gorillas. We didn't see any this time. Other than the national park, there's a lot of logging happening in this area. It was on this stretch of road that we stopped in Tonri at our favorite bush restaurant and also picked up the barrel of fuel. We arrived that evening in Nyele, the 9th day of our trip, if I recall correctly. It is 5:40 a.m. and very bright, and we are in Nyele. This is the auberge, the place that we stayed at last night. It was very nice. The funny thing is that the lights are hardwired, which is like there's no light switch to turn them on or off, and so they're just on whether you want them to be or not, from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. But we were pretty pooped, so we were in bed at like 9, and so I just waited for them to turn off. I fell asleep while they were still on. Michael made a funny comment that in the villages that are full of this kind of building, you feel like you're in the Wild West, but in the jungle. So we are here in Boyeli. Here is water access, and we've gone to the chief's house to let him know that we are here, and so asked him for help to find a guy to take us down the river to Mpondo. So, because we stopped on the crossroads, we could have kept driving or turned here to take a boat, and we prayed for a sign. We said, Lord, if a truck comes from Mpondo, then we know that the road is good. So we stopped and we prayed and we waited a little bit, and no truck came, but there was people, and the people said, oh no, don't go down that road, the road is still bad. So we took their advice, got over here. So now we are just gotten back to our trucks, and we're gonna start getting sorted. The Preco was very hospitable and agreed to help us find a boat to take us the rest of the way. This involved finding both a dugout canoe, called a pirogue, and a boat motor. So we stayed in the spot he showed us, unloaded our things from the truck, and waited. Trucks! Hi, Michael.
Hello.
And this is the stairs. This is our takeoff spot.
Yeah, and we're thinking, how are we going to get especially a big can of fuel, big barrel of fuel down there?
150 kilograms. So we're kind of concerned, but we're not the ones responsible for it.
And they just
so
said, oh, don't worry. People are smart. They'll
we're
take care of it.
hoping they'll know how to do it.
I'm excited to see it. I'm sure they're right.
I'm sure they've done similar things before. In the meantime, the guys went to find the Catholic parish, asking if they would allow us to park our truck there. And as the sky darkened and threatened rain, we went and bought umbrellas. I smiled to remember that an umbrella is called a parasole if it's sunny, and a parapluie if it's raining. And of course, we unloaded the barrel of fuel. We had arrived in Boyeli around 8 a.m., and it was a little past noon when we were loaded up into the pirogue and departed. It did in fact start to rain, first a sprinkle, and then it was a little too heavy for comfort, and so we pulled up into this village. The houses by the river had been flooded out, the bottom of the walls washed away. Going inside was eerie. Whose homes were these? The people would be coming back most likely, as their things were bundled up and tucked up into the rafters. The mud sucked my sandals off my feet, and I was too tired to care. A gift for the homeowners when they returned. I don't know how long we stayed there, but eventually the rain lightened up and we were on our way again. We stopped one more time for a bathroom break, and then we made it home. We pulled up into Mfondo at around 7 p.m., 5 hours after we had left. If the road had been passable, we would have likely covered that distance in 2 hours. Brian and Becky drove up to take us the rest of the way home. It was good to be back.